Whoa, so the art market is the most unregulated market in the world. I know you guys have seen the headlines that have been going around about this artist in Denmark who was commissioned by the museum to do 2 pieces, but basically he ran off with the money and delivered 2 blank canvases. So I mean, that was the headline going everywhere. The New York Post one says museum pays artist $84,000, he delivers 2 blank canvases titled "Take the Money and Run." So that article was going around, a ton of other articles saying the same thing, that he stole money, it was theft. After I did a lot of digging, I really came away from it thinking differently. So if you don't know the story, here it is. So the Caption Museum of Modern Art in Denmark, it's a Danish museum, basically was trying to do an exhibition about artists in the labor market. They called the exhibition Work It Out. So they have a famous Danish artist, Jens Honning, I believe I'm saying it right, Jens Honning. They commissioned him to recreate 2 pieces that he did, I believe 7 years before. So this was like pieces he made a long time ago. So they commissioned him to recreate that today. And those 2 pieces were titled The Average Austrian Year Income and The Average Danish Year Income. Basically, those 2 pieces talked about the average salary or the average wages that someone would make in those 2 respective countries. And the actual piece basically was all these banknotes that were framed on 2 pieces of canvas. So each piece basically showed the average salary for, you know, someone in those respective countries. The Caption Museum of Modern Art wanted that artist to recreate those 2 pieces. So they gave the artist $84,000 to recreate those pieces. Basically, the $84,000 that, you know, was in the headlines was used to actually get the banknotes to actually put on the actual canvases. So it would be the recreation of the pieces where the artist wasn't going out of their pocket to actually get the banknotes themselves. It was the museum's $84,000 that would be used on those pieces. And then at the end of the exhibition, the artist would give the banknotes back to the museum. So that was the $84,000. It was basically just a loan, not even a loan, they lent it to them to be the materials for the actual artwork. But the artist did not want to recreate work he already did. He wanted to actually have an honest conversation about the relationship of artists and the art market and museums, and, you know, how much artists paid and the value of art and the value of artists in the world in respect to everyone else and all these other industries. So that is what the artist set out to do. So when the artist delivered the pieces in a crate, the museum curator and the staff opened up the crates and discovered 2 blank canvases. And the curator knew something was up after he got, I guess, the message about the title of the actual pieces that he delivered, "Take the Money and Run," and saw the 2 blank canvases. So he put 2 and 2 together and was like, oh snap, I may get fired from my job, what? So in the article it says, but the curators first suspected something was amiss upon receiving an email from Honning that said he had changed the artwork's name to "Take the Money and Run." So that is how this whole situation came about. But in the article, it sort of quoted the artist saying, "It is not theft, it is breach of contract, and breach of contract is part of the work." So the actual breach of contract was part of, you know, sort of like the idea of the materials and the process. And it wasn't so much the deliverables, it was basically that relationship was sort of like the art in itself. So it then goes on to say, the artist said he had conceived the cheeky creation as a protest against the pittance he received for inclusion in the show, which reportedly required him to pay nearly $4,000 to reimagine 2 works. So the artist is actually saying that the $84,000 was not for him, it was for the work, and the stipend that he got to create the work didn't support the actual creation of that work itself. So he was basically saying that he had to pay $4,000 out of his pocket to be a part of this show, to be a part of this exhibition. So the artist is not being respected, the artist is not getting getting paid. The artist is basically, you know, out of luck, and they're providing artwork that the museum benefits from, that the community benefits from. So what does that relationship look like between the artist and the community? I'm not getting any sort of compensation. I'm actually having to pay to be a part of the show. Jens Hanning then goes on to say, take the money and run, questions artists' right to their working conditions in order to establish more equitable norms within the art industry. Everyone would like to have more money, and in our society, work industries are valued differently. The artwork is essentially about the working conditions of artists. It is the statement saying that we also have the responsibility of questioning structures that we are a part of. You know, that is, you know, different than what the actual headlines that was basically going out there was about. And after the canvases were delivered, the museum still put up the work in the exhibition. So you can actually see people in front of it looking at the canvases. And one thing that I would have to say about those canvases, each canvas really has the same proportions as his older works. And it's not sort of like he bought blank canvases. It looks like the canvases were this, you know, similar canvases as before. And the texture on those canvases that you can kind of see and kind of resemble seems like those places were the places where, you know, the actual banknotes would be placed on the actual canvas. So it's not like the artist just bought 2 blank canvases from the art store. He basically sort of created the canvases in the same proportion as what it was before, and then basically said, okay, I'm not gonna put the banknotes on there. I'm gonna make a commentary or use the sort of breach of contract as part of the materials and say, hey, you know, I'm just gonna take this money and run. And the funny thing is, when people say he stole or it was theft, it's not actually theft until they ask for the money back. So the $84,000 was supposed to be returned at the end of the exhibition. So the exhibition is still going on, and I'll have an update in my description as the video ages, see what happens after the exhibition, see if the artist returned it, because the artist is supposed to return the money at the end of the exhibition, and it's still currently the exhibition, so we don't know exactly whether the artist is going to return it or not. So that is the question. This is more than $84,000 worth of PR, because I basically learned about the artist and the museum and the work, and now it's kind of like, you know, the attention and the sort of conversation around the work, you know, basically is what they wanted. And for me, you know, this is a great piece of work. I'm now more interested in the artist. I'm now more interested in, you know, the future works of the artist as well. And I think it was a very clever way of actually going about, you know, creating work for a museum, actually talking about the conversation that they wanted to have, the artist's role in the labor market, especially because the museum wanted that artist to do something that they thought would be great, rather than going to the artist and say, what would you like to do? So the artist perspective for me was a lot better than the museum perspective and saying, this is what we want you to do, this is the work that we want you to do, this old work. Whereas the artist was like, no, I'm going to do this new work. And that work actually basically worked, because it got a ton of attention, it got a ton of people talking about it, including myself. So for me, this was a great example of artists using, you know, the actual contract and the breach of contract and relationships between museums and curators and artists and expectations as a medium, using the process as a medium, you know, everything from shipping blank canvases to the actual museum, the whole conversation between, you know, whether he's going to give the money back at the end of the exhibition or not. You know, that right there is, for me, the artwork in itself. So that is it until the exhibition ends, and I really want to do an update at the end of the exhibition and let you guys know exactly whether the artist gave the money back or not. So I'm super excited, and hopefully you like the video, because I want to do more of these in terms of just like talking more about what's happening in the art world in terms of the news and sort of like what's, you know, going on around the world in different museums and things like that, and all these different issues that sort of pop up. So hopefully you'll like the video. Definitely like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you're notified whenever I do videos like this, and I will see you next time. Peace.